Hello, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. Sir.
How are you, my brother? Rocking you, rocking you.
Could you imagine, people? I interviewed him as co-founder of 100 Black Men in Law Enforcement. I interviewed him as senator. I interviewed him as borough president. And now it's my distinguished honor to interview him as Mayor Eric Adams. How you doing, sir?
Brother, and we go so far back.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout that entire journey, and, I cannot say thank you enough. People don't realize that you don't get anywhere by yourself. You get there when people believe in you and you believe. And now whenever you need me on this air, all you got to do is say, Eric, call in, and I'm here for you, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, sir,
love you.
I thank you very much. Listen, sir, you've come a long way, and I'm curious to know, when you first found out that you were going to become mayor of New York, what did you say to yourself? What thoughts were running through you? What did you do?
I just said, when I first became mayor, I said to myself, what took so long?
People spread the word. I've got Mayor Adams on with me. Mayor Adams is on with me. Oh, man, that's crazy. Now, I thought you would give an answer like that, but I guess a lot of people who don't know you might not expect you an answer like that.
Well, listen, a lot of people that don't know you know that you made the term rocking you famous.
Sir, it's been brought to my attention that you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Is that true?
Every morning I meditate. I give thanks to the ancestors and the Creator.
Wow.
I exercise, and then I take my green smoothie and start my day.
What does a typical day look like for the mayor?
It's full, brother, but what's very fascinating is that people say, is it overwhelming? And, how did you transition? It just doesn't feel any different from my days of what I've been doing for the last 35 years. I have been meeting with people, addressing problems, fighting for reform, fighting for agencies to do their job. And so I'm just continuing what I did for the last 35 years. So this is not overwhelming. I'm in a position to do some good things for people in the city that have been often forgotten, and I'm going to live up to that.
Is there a perception you had of what being a mayor was like, and now you're actually mayor? It is not that perception anymore.
Listen, the last 6 weeks or 5 weeks, as you know, it has been challenging. We had a major fire where we lost a large number of New Yorkers. We had 11-month-old baby shot. Thank God the bullet went through her skull and she came out all right. She's still with us. We had 6 police officers were shot, and 2 we lost their lives. These were real heroes. This has been a very challenging month. And so I, just feel as though you get up every day, you believe in, God is not going to place anything on you that you can't carry, and you continue to do your job. And so I'm ready for this. I've been prepared for this for a long time, and we're going to navigate through COVID. We're going to navigate through our schools being open and navigate getting our economy back up and operating. I am ready for this moment. Those of us who have a religious philosophy, they know that this is a Esther 4 and 14th moment. God made me for such a time like this.
You talked about fires that you had that were done in New York that caused a lot of deaths. I see that there's a relief effort for victims of the Bronx apartment building fire. Tell us more about that fund, and is it only for people from the Bronx, or does it spread out across New York, and is it retroactive?
Well, we like to be honest in how we report things. There was a call to get relief for particularly to this fire that took place, and the dollars that were raised, we said in the beginning, it will go immediately and directly to the people who were impacted. If we have to do more relief funds, then we would like to let people know exactly where the money is going so people don't think we're doing a bait and switch. The money that was raised is going to go to those who lived in the building to allow them to, number one, make sure that they can relocate if necessary for those who don't want to return. but also giving them the basic household needs that they have, because people lost everything, and that's where the dollars are going to.
You said one of the first things you wanted to do as mayor is to get New Yorkers who ran away to return to New York. What is your plan to accomplish this feat? Also, you got the crime situation you talked about. You got the homeless situation, and especially the criminals with brazen acts now. That seems like when they're put in jail, they're out the next 2 days doing the same thing that they were put in jail for. How do you do it?
And brother, you know what? It's all the same. Sometimes we look at the enormity of the problem without going to the foundation of the problem. The problem in this city and country, to be honest with you, is that the city is dysfunctional. We create our crises, and we look back later and say, why are we in the place that we're in? Because we do. My hero that passed away this year, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, he stated that we spend a lifetime pulling people out of the river. No one goes upstream and prevent them from falling in the first place. And that's how we run government. We just hang out downstream and wait for people to come from upstream that we threw in the river. There's no reason we throw people in the river who are dyslexic and wait downstream for them to be arrested. 30% of our prison population in the country is predicted to be dyslexic. 55% of people on Rikers Island have learning disabilities. If we would have gone upstream and prevented them from falling in the river, then we won't be downstream pulling them out of a criminal justice system. We had a young man yesterday, Dahved, 18 years old, was shot and killed in Brooklyn. When you do an analysis of his record, you'll see when he was 11, his mother was asking for help for him. We put him in special ed. We did not give him the support that he needed. He was in the homeless shelter. He was having an arrest for gun robbery, for armed robbery, gun possession, and even murder. So we abandoned him and created the criminal that we saw on our streets. And I'm going upstream and not for people to fall in the river, but to make sure that they give the opportunities that they need and deserve.
Sir, as a former police yourself, how would you feel when you're out there putting your life on the line, getting criminals off the street, and in a few days they're back on the streets doing the same thing that they were locked up for in the first time? As a former police officer, I wanted to tell our audience, how does that make you feel?
Well, people often try to start my history as being a police officer. That's the same with starting the history of black people with slavery. I had a rich history before I became a cop. I was arrested at 15, beat by police officers, went into the police department and started 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care, fought for reform. My history goes beyond when I swore to become a police officer. But while I was a police officer, I fought for two things. I fought for safety and justice. The safety we needed and the justice we deserved. But there's a level of frustration when you see people commit some of the violent acts, and then our criminal justice system is not making sure that they don't continue to perpetuate those crimes. Today, people were sitting on the bus, and all of a sudden someone discharged a bullet in a shootout, and the bullet lodged into the bus. What do you say to people who are trying to live safely in their city and they have to deal with this endless violence? So my goal, as I rolled out my blueprint to end gun violence, I don't want to only end the violence that we're experiencing today. I want to stop the pipeline that feeds people to have to be in violence in the first place. But it's a level of frustration, but we're going to stay committed. Last year, Dahved, the police department took 6,000 guns off the street, illegal guns. This year, close to 400, and in the 5 weeks I've been in office, have been removed off the streets. But there's an endless flow of guns that are coming into our city, predominantly from the southern part of this country. And if we don't stop the flow of guns, we're going to be in a constant state of trying to deal with this gun violence. There are no gun manufacturing plants in New York City. So why do we have so many guns in our city? And that's why I asked the president to come here to our city to talk about how do we stop this flow and how do we do our job of dealing with the violence that we're seeing in our city.
You met with the president last week. I was getting to that now. You've got a blueprint plan, and you've got an anti-gun plan. how did the president respond to your blueprint and your anti-gun plan?
Very receptive. And, I really take my hat off to President Biden. He was probably, in my belief, one of the only presidents that stated we cannot be in a country with all of this prosperity and continue to witness the countless level of violence we're seeing in the inner cities in our country. Think about this for a moment. When 2 planes flew into our building and during 2001, September 11th, we had an immediate response to say never again will we allow terrorism to cripple our way of life. Yet we're seeing everyday terror being perpetrated on our communities. The number of shootings in Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta, St. Louis, San Francisco, New York City. We don't have that same level of urgency because it is my belief that when it happened in predominantly black and brown communities, it's viewed as an incident, but when it happens in other communities, it's viewed as an urgency and a crisis. That's the same thing we saw with crack cocaine. It was just an incident, no urgency, but when opioids went throughout the entire country in affluent areas, it was a crisis. We see that over and over again, and that is with this gun violence. Biden finally said enough is enough. We need to give the resources to stop the flow of guns, to give support to the inner cities so that they don't have to be placed on a pathway of crime, and also go after these illegal gun dealers that are making billions of dollars allowing these illegal guns to come on our streets. And so I was happy that he came here. He went to a crisis management location in Queensbridge with a brother K. Bain. He visited some of the people who are doing the work on the ground, not non-police, but being very proactive. And he says, Eric, I'm ready to give the help that's needed. And I thank the president for doing that.
Crime on the subways where persons are being pushed onto the tracks. There are subway systems in other parts of the world where barriers stop you from being pushed onto the train and only opens up when the train comes to a complete stop. What are your thoughts? Now, I know this does not directly come onto you. This is the governor's office. This is Albany. But what are your thoughts?
It's long overdue. I don't know why it's taking so long to use this modern way of protecting people from falling onto the tracks. If we were responsible for the subway system, I would have long instituted this. I was in the borough president's office. I met with people who understood the technology. We're hoping that the governor will look at this to see that it was time for us to implement this type of program. And she's very thoughtful. And I think that if we're going to get it done, this is the administration when we can actually get it done.
Let's talk about the undocumented immigrant population in New York. What do you say to the women who are being beaten, the child being molested, the daughter who is forced into prostitution, but they say nothing because there's fear that they will be deported?
And I witnessed this before when I was a police officer, Dahved. There were those who preyed on those who were undocumented, and because they felt as though they would never go to the police and report the issue. That's why our city must remain a sanctuary city, and we must ensure that if someone comes forward, that ICE is no way notified or participate in an investigation. People have to feel free that they should not be a victim of a crime, and people who prey on immigrants, I think, should be held to a higher standard so to make sure that they get the full extent of the law.
So you are 100% behind New York being a sanctuary city?
100%. Listen, no matter who we all came from somewhere. No one is original unless you are part of the original indigenous people. So we all came from another country, another place. So if anyone ever tells you to go back to the country you came from, you should tell them you will when they go back to the country that they came from. So we all came from somewhere.
You know, I've known you for quite a long time, and the next question I'm going to ask you I'm curious to see your answer. As a man who was able to fight diabetes through diet and exercise, what is your administration doing with healthy meals and exercise in the schools, especially to help build the immune system for COVID?
No, so true. And a lot of people don't really fully appreciate or respect how much food plays a role in our health. Those with the Caribbean diaspora and African diaspora, that you ate from the land. You ate healthy foods. The foods was not overprocessed. And you could look at your aunties, your grandmas, and what have you. They lived well into their years because they ate from the land. We no longer eat food. We eat food-like products. We overprocess. If you go around the poorer communities or the economically challenging communities, you see nothing but fast food, junk food, and that is what's happening in our schools. We feed our healthcare crises, childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, asthma. All of these things are related to the foods that we eat. And I'm moving forward to get a more healthier food distribution in our city and in our schools, so we're not feeding the healthcare crises.
Sir, were you surprised at the opposition you got when you appointed your brother, who is a retired police officer, as deputy New York PD commissioner?
No, I wasn't surprised at the opposition because, here I am coming in as mayor, and I am bringing in blue-collar people, everyday people. Historically, mayors come in, they bring in people they went to law school with. They would bring in people that they have known throughout their years and are part of the inside game in the city. But I have the audacity to bring in everyday people, and so I'm going to get pushback. My brother's more than qualified. We've had deputy commissioners in similar positions who were not even a ranking member, like my brother retired. We had detectives become deputy commissioners. We've had sergeants become deputy commissioners. So it doesn't surprise me. You and I both know I have the Wilt Chamberlain issue. Once I start scoring 100 points, they're going to start changing the rules of the game. But I'm still going to score the points anyway and keep it moving.
I know you got to run, but I've got two more questions before you go. People, if you're not joining us, we are live with Mayor Adams. He's here for the first time on Entertainment Radio, and we're doing an interview. So, let's talk about restaurants. You are a person who loves to be out, who loves to support the restaurants and bars and lounges and these things. And some people are upset with the buildings that go on in the street, the little side street bars that are built on the sidewalk and in the streets to expand what they were doing for COVID-19. So people are saying the sidewalks are bringing rats, they're bringing no parking, they're bringing garbage, bad pickups. Are you for the restaurants being on the sidewalk and in the street? And are you going to have some kind of form together that people have to adhere to legally put their restaurants in the streets?
First of all, I am supportive of the concept. I was in the Bronx today with a group of councilperson to talk about this, and let's do it in layers. Number one, it was an emergency to put in place to keep our restaurants open. Over 100,000 people were able to remain employed. You think of a restaurant, don't think of a fancy cafe somewhere. Think of the fact that inside that restaurant, you have dishwashers, cooks, waiters, people who work behind the bar, bus boys and girls. I was a dishwasher as a child. So if you lose your restaurant industry, you're going to lose low-wage workers. And that is something we need to think about. And we took the right steps to say, how do we creatively keep the restaurants open and at the same time do it in a safe fashion during COVID? This was a real win for our city, and it kept money in our economy. Restaurants are the bellwether of your entire city. If we lose them, we're going to lose the tax base that we need to keep the police officers, the teachers, the firefighters. This is all part of the economic ecosystem. And I know that some people may say that, listen, we don't want the outside cafes there or the dining spaces. I understand that, but we have to weather the storm of COVID. Number two, now we are looking at it to see how do we do it better. Councilwoman Velasquez is holding hearings, and she's going to talk about how do we standardize so that we can make sure we deal with the rat issues, the trash issue. How do we make sure the sheds and the outdoor spaces are,
Are legal.
have a certain level of code to them. So it's not any and everything goes. It's a small way to do it, but let's keep it. The one thing we must keep in mind, we need restaurants and small businesses open. They were devastated by COVID, and we need to make sure that we're able to hire and employ those low-wage workers because they're the backbones of our city.
Before you go, let's talk about Carnival. You have been a supporter of Caribbean Carnival down Eastern Parkway for years. You've jumped on Eastern Parkway. You've been behind the museum. Where do we stand with Caribbean Carnival 2022 on Eastern Parkway behind the Brooklyn Museum?
Listen, we're going to march up the Parkway. We've been doing it for so long. We're going to continue to do it, brother. I've been on going to that carnival since the 70s, and we're going to continue to do so with more support. I'm going to try to attract a television station to cover it so that we can broadcast it live. We're going to try to get some real sponsors in place. It is crucial that we get the support to the carnival. It's been in the heart of my borough as the Brooklyn Borough president. And the Caribbean diaspora has contributed so much to the borough of Brooklyn, the borough of Queens, that we need to lift that up. It is my goal to eventually have a museum dedicated to the rich energy of the Caribbean community in the city of New York. It's long overdue, and Carnival is a representation of how much we look towards the celebration each year behind the museum as well as on Eastern Parkway. It's a real rich part of our culture in the borough of Brooklyn, a diverse place, and we need to celebrate that. And we have not done a great job in doing so, but that stops as long as I'm the mayor of the city of New York. We're going to have a carnival on Eastern Parkway.
Okay, Mayor, listen, thank you very much. You got to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning. You got to get up. You got to get your juice. You got to do your exercise. So I'm going to let you go, sir. Mayor Adams, thank you very much for allowing us to come into your hearts and homes. Thank you very much for supporting us. Thank you very much for remembering us. Some people say, well, he became mayor. He's not going to come on again with you. You proved them wrong. They said, Dahved, you can't get him to come on again. He's mayor now. And look, here you are with us tonight, Sunday night. You even allowed me to go to commercial and come back. Any closing words you want? The last words are yours.
Brother, there's only two words I need to say. Rocking you. Rocking you.
Mayor Adams, thank you very much. And listen, I would, with your permission, I would love to do this at least maybe once a month. You can come to the people and let them know what's going on.
I would love that. This way we stay up to date on what is happening in the city. And so let's look forward. Once a month, we hop on and just chat again. And I'll let you know as we move progressively towards having a city that we're going to end this inequality, get this violence under control, and open our city so that we can raise healthy children and families.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a good sleep.
Thank you.
Thank you.